Jeffers, Water and Sewer Managing Engineer for the Town of Exeter. I am in charge of water treatment, water distribution, wastewater collection, and wastewater treatment.
So my first question is, why do we flush the water system?
We flush the water mains to clean off biofilm growths and minerals that accumulate on the sides of the pipe twice a year. By law, we're required to do it once a year, but twice a year is better. It's like if you can get away with changing your oil once a year, but twice is better, that's what we do. It is a preventative maintenance measure. Keeping the lines clean prevents water tasting poorly, sagging chlorine residuals, because if there's not enough chlorine, you don't get proper disinfection. This summer we experienced musty water. That's all indications that it's time to flush, which we will do about a week from today. The problem is of a pipe not being flushed, a water main, is biofilm is part of it. There's always something that grows. The water that we have is disinfected. It is not sterilized. That's a huge difference for water operators and wastewater operators when they take their exam. We disinfect the water, which means that some organisms are still alive. Pathogenic, disease-causing organisms are very susceptible to chlorine, and we do a very good job of removing them. But the more harmless types that live in the water will probably still be alive. They'll get out into the water lines, especially iron bacteria, and they'll start to form little colonies on the side of the pipe. That interferes with chlorine. It can add taste. And the way the colonies form in this biofilm or bioslime is they can actually also start corrosion of the pipe due to their chemicals, something called galvanic action, start to eat holes in the pipe.
Have you ever had that experience in the Town of Exeter where you open the ground up and there's a big hole in the pipe, or recently or anything like that?
The Town of Exeter has some very old water pipes. The water pipes that are cast iron, many of the water pipes, or a decreasing number, are post-Civil War era. It has been shown that a lot of the water pipe in town that is cast iron was built by the cannon manufacturers, and we've seen dates of 1800s and done some research to find that those pipes are that old. And when we take them out, they're very pitted, very corroded. Some of it is natural chemical corrosion, and some of it's due to the biofilm both. The natural chemical corrosion forms these, what we call tubercles, and it looks almost like a flower of iron. It almost looks like a rose. And when we flush, we hopefully get the water up high enough to wash that off, because as the pipe surface gets more rough with the accumulations of the rust, whether it's a biofilm or a chemical oxidation, rough pipe means the water has to work harder to go through it. So in the case of a fire, the firemen get less flow. So there's sanitary reasons and there's firefighting reasons to keep the pipes as clean as possible.
How is the water flushing done?
Well, normally water traveling through our water mains travels extremely slowly. It moves like a turtle. The water mains are sized for fire flows to do thousands of gallons a minute. Normal domestic use by the businesses, the homes, the restaurants is hundreds of gallons a minute, a magnitude or two less, much less water. Because the water moves so slowly, it gives the water in the pipe time to start growing on the pipe. All water everywhere in the country, no matter how well treated, always has something start to grow. There's always some minerals that build up, or the water just gets old and warm, which is especially the case this summer of 2015. So what we do to flush is we do the same thing as what a fireman would do during a fire. Is we open up a lot of hydrants, we put an instrument on it to measure the flow, to make the water accelerate from that slow turtle pace, I should say, to something that's 4 to 5 to 6 feet per second. That's fast. That actually reaches something called a scouring velocity, and scouring implies that it's cleaning the pipe, and that is correct. The water actually tumbles in the pipe very forcefully and starts to scrub off the walls of the pipe. We monitor the water that's coming out, very high-tech instrument, a white paper cup, and when it goes from the brownish color to the tan color to clear and no particles, we know we're done with that section, and then we shut the valves and moved on to another section.
So do you do it water hydrant by water hydrant, or is it like street by street? How do you determine that?
Each part of town is different. Some hydrants may be too close to each other, some may be too far apart. Some hydrants might be right in front of somebody's driveway where the water will flow into their garage. Real story. We try not to let that happen, so we're selective on which hydrants we use to do the least amount of, I would say, inconvenience, especially with leaf season. Hopefully this year we'll be pretty much done before the leaves come down. We notice that when we flush, when most of the leaves come down, it puts leaves all over the place, and that is an inconvenience.
Yeah, I can see how that would be an inconvenience. Is there a name for the different type of flushing that we do, and are there other types of flushing that other towns do?
Here in Exeter, we do two types of flushing simultaneously. We do what's called unidirectional flush, and we also do what's called rolling flush. The unidirectional part is, imagine a town or a city having a grid of pipelines. Pipes go down one street, intersect with another. Think of like a tic-tac-toe grid. When you do unidirectional flushing, you don't want to do multiple pipes at one time. You open and close valves so that you take the grid, or one of those lines of the tic-tac-toe, and make it simply a point A to point B, so that that's the only thing that's being flushed from point A to point B. That way you know which pipe was flushed. You can put instruments on the hydrant to measure the flow rate, which ultimately gives you the velocity, because we're looking for that scouring velocity that we mentioned earlier. And then the second part of that is the rolling flush part is just being very efficient, working smarter, which most people have been trained in New England recently. Now you've just got done flushing point A to point B. Not too many years ago, they would say, okay, we'll stop flushing point A to point B, shut the water off, move over here from point P or B to C, and then start that up, flush it, shut down B to C, get in your trucks and move, to D to E. We don't do that. The smart way to do it that we do, assuming we have enough people at night, for the first week of night flushing, is you're finished from point A to point B and you're in communications with the person at point B, somebody goes down to point C, opens up a hydrant there, and then closes a valve wherever necessary so that the water never really stops moving. It now goes past point B to point C. Then when you've got B to C clean, before you shut anything off, you now go to point D, open that hydrant and or valves as needed, so that the water essentially keeps rolling. It's always rolling, a rolling flush. That's better than water going off, on, off, on, off, on. Also, it disturbs the water less. People would notice if they were up in the middle of the night, because the first week is at night, you'd notice less stained water. So it's kind of a win-win. You use less water, it's a smoother operation, and the consumer would be a little happier.
How many people does it usually take to do an operation like this?
A minimum of 4.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly small towns and previous people flushing in the old days, before we had better training, might flush as few as 2 people. But that was the point A to the point B to the point B to the point C. Mm-hmm. To do it unidirectional and to do a rolling flush, it's a minimum of 4 people.
At what point did the Town of Exeter start using like the rolling flush method?
Probably about 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
About 4 years ago, we were guilty, as other small towns around us were, of doing it the good old-fashioned way from the 1960s. I bought in somebody who I'd worked with previously in another town who specializes in this, a professional engineer. Mm-hmm. We provided a lot of maps of the system and actually drew up a flushing plan, so you don't go out and simply say, I think we'll do this valve and let's go down that street. It's all choreographed of which valve you open and close, which street you go to next, which street following after. So it's actually a very clear-cut plan. But it also changes every year, because say last year we found out we did Prospect Avenue and Prospect Street connects to it, and we found out that for some reason we didn't get the line clean enough, or the water rolled into somebody's driveway. We take note of that and modify the plan for next year. So when you find what works good and what doesn't work so good, you change the plan every year. So every year you get a little bit better, and we know we're doing better, because we started out at like 6 to 6.5 weeks, and we're amazed at how dirty the pipes were, even though they were flushed the previous year under the old methods. Over the last few years, it's gone from like 6 to 6.5 weeks to 5 weeks, and this year, anticipating we might make it in 4. That's because you got the lines cleaner, better the last time, and you've learned how to do it more smartly or more intelligently.
So how much preparation's involved in planning this whole process? You mentioned that you have a plan already in place that you have to customize a little every year. So how much planning is really involved each time you have to do this?
Well,
year?
you use the word preparation.
Yeah.
We go out for a couple of weeks in advance, and there's hundreds and hundreds of valves. And through the year, say fall to spring, there's a lot of sand used on the roads, it rains, it melts, it tends to go in these boxes, valve burial boxes. You see the round circles like this, and it says water. And at the bottom of that, if it's nice and clean, you could shine a flashlight down, you can actually see the top of a valve. It looks like a bonnet. And then a 2-inch square nut. That's what we put the wrench on to open and close the valve. We have had 2 and 3 feet of sand, dirt, and rocks over those valves. You don't want to discover that the night that you're out there at 1 in the morning.
Yeah.
So we start 2 or 3 weeks in advance, go out with what we call our travel vac, which is basically a water tank with a squirt gun on it, only a big one, to break up the sand and the silt and the rocks, and then we literally take that mud, if you will, and vacuum it out so that we can look down there and see a nice clean metal valve. So we're vacuuming, we're cleaning the house, we're vacuuming out the gate valves. Not all of them need it, but the key valves that you need, which are several hundred, you want to visit, make sure they're okay, and many of them do require this washout and vacuuming. Okay, and it's good that we do that because sometimes through the years a big truck goes by and this metal tube, this gate valve burial box is in sections. There's a part that's say 5.5 inches and a part that's 5.25 inches, so they telescope, go up and down. If DOT is going to pave or the town's going to pave, we can actually reach down and make it go up or down a little bit. Sometimes due to the movement of big trucks, frost, nearby construction, instead of being nice and straight and telescoping, they go a little cockeyed and can bend enough that you actually can't get in there and get the wrench on anymore. And then that's bad because you can't operate the valve at all, whether for flushing or for a water main break. So we kind of find out like, oh, we had damage, we have to do maintenance.
So the sense I'm getting from you is that over the past 4 years, you guys have really improved the process of water flushing. You made it a lot more efficient. So that's pretty awesome. You're pretty proud of that?
We are.
Yeah.
We are. We work smarter instead of harder, and we're doing it the same way that all the operators in the state and the region are being taught by American Water Works Association, and locally it's New England Water Works Association. We go to the trade shows, we go to the seminars, and we learn a lot of tricks.
So you mentioned the American Water Works Association and then the New England Water Works Association. So are there different ways that this is done throughout the country, or does the country all kind of do it the same way?
There's been a big push on for a number of years, if not the last decade, for everybody in the country who operates a water distribution system to get this training. It saves water. It saves time, it saves cost, you do a better job. So most people are getting there. The holdouts are the very, very small water systems that perhaps don't have the time for the training, or it's because such a small system they don't think it's worth trying to do a very careful unidirectional rolling flush. And it may be the case if it's an extremely small water system. But Exeter's big enough that we are basically a city the size of a town. And that's something I've heard said multiple times, and it's very true.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
Yes, our infrastructure for what we have for about 15,000 people is almost the same as like Nashua or Manchester have. We have 3 water tanks, 2 groundwater treatment plants, about 55 miles of water mains, little stations in between that raise the pressure, lower the pressure, add chlorine. If you put all that on a map, you go like, there's a lot of things here to maintain for water. You wouldn't expect it in a small town like Exeter.
You really wouldn't. As you mentioned that there were some sensors that you used to measure the water.
Yes, we have something called a flushing monster, and it goes on to the hydrant. We actually have several of them. And the water comes out with a great deal of force. If you just open a hydrant and let the water come out, it may wash out somebody's lawn or just make a big mess. The flushing monster diffuses the water. It takes all this high-speed water with a lot of velocity and force and spreads it out to small rivulets, and included in that is what we call a venturi. It's not a venturi, it is a, well, maybe it is a venturi, pitot gauge, flow gauge, and we have a chart, and you read this thing and it tells you how many thousands of gallons per minute, and then you say it's an 8-inch pipe, you read the chart, and you know you're going 3, 4, 5 feet per second, because what we're after is to hit at least 4 feet, hopefully 5 feet per second of linear velocity. If you know how much water is coming out, measured by this device, it's not a water meter, it doesn't have a moving part. It measures the drop in pressure, and then you read the chart, and you know it's an 8-inch pipe. It's straight mathematics in a table. You know, did you run the water enough to create that scouring velocity? And that's pretty common to most water systems.
Alright, here we go. Robbie's the man. I'm going to flush a hydrant. I'm going to take the steamer cap off. I'm going to put this adapter on. Lefty loosey, righty tighty. Make sure that's tight. Hook up your flow master. This connection right here is a pain. It has to snap in. If it doesn't snap in, it'll fall off. We're ready to open the hydrant. And every hydrant you open has to be slow. Very slow. And when you close a hydrant too fast, you create what's called a water. That's that. Robbie Souza, systems operator. We just got done flushing a hydrant. We just showed you the ins and outs and how to turn it on very slowly and how to close it very slowly. And now we're logging the info into the computer. And that's it. Thank you.
What effects of water flushing can residents expect to experience?
Well, the residents need to follow the website, the paper announcements and so forth to have an idea, including the electronic signs, what streets are being done, because except for the first week, starting this Monday, which I believe is the 12th, I believe it's a holiday, we do that one at night because that's like the main highway, which is between Epping Road Tank and Portsmouth Avenue. People using water primarily for laundry during that time could expect to get their laundry stained by either a gray or a tan color caused by iron and manganese. So if they're forewarned and they don't do grandma's best whites during that time, that's a great idea. Now if this does happen, we do supply something called Iron Out or Iron Be Gone that can be used with the laundry again that usually takes these stains out.
Where can they go to get that iron out?
Well, we have some at the water treatment plant, or it can be purchased at RJ's, Home Depot, Lowe's. It's pretty common in the plumbing section. If you drank the water will be turbid. There'll be some iron and manganese in it. It is not toxic. It won't taste good. It won't look good, but it is not harmful.
Oh.
Well, if you're using hot water while we're flushing, and it's during the earlier part when the water is at its dirtiest, and you're using hot water, it's going to draw it into the hot water tank, and you're going to have 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 gallons of dirty water, and it's going to take a while for that to get out.
Yeah.
So it's good not to have your hot water tank get a charge of the dirty water.